You know what, I may have been a bit harsh in writing this whole trilogy off as mediocre in that Rival Turf video because this one actually ain't too bad. It's Brawl Brothers, released in 1993 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System courtesy of Jellico. And while you wouldn't know it from the localization, this is actually the sequel to a previously released Jellico game called Rival Turf. Well, in Japan at least, where that game was called Rushing Beat, and this game is called Rushing Beat Ran, or Rushing Beat Run. In fact, if you sequentially press the face buttons on the Jellico logo, you can play the Japanese original on your American Brawl Brothers game pack or ROM image, which is actually pretty darn neat and probably worth checking out, because there's a couple differences between the two versions, which we'll get into in a little bit. In Brawl Brothers, you assume control of one of 5 characters. 2 of the previous game's heroes are somewhat represented here with new names in this entry, and they're joined by 3 new faces, one of which is not a brother. And if you're playing a single-player game, you also get to pick a second character as a backup of sorts, or something. Right, so the way this works is that Brawl Brothers has 4 main stages that you play through, and the 3 characters that aren't selected in the beginning end up being the bosses of the first 3 stages, with the in-game explanation being that they've been kidnapped and you're fighting their clones, in the Japanese version at least. In Brawl Brothers, you fight them because they're dicks who stole your lunch money or something like that, I don't know. Point being that because of this, whenever you lose all your lives and you choose to continue, you can either keep your current character or swap to your second character and see if they fare any better. Now, as you beat your pals to submission, they'll join your cause and you could swap characters in between stages, so this sort of makes sense in that you're saving your pals and they'll help kick butt by being selectable characters between stages or after using a continue. Now, through some sort of mythical time travel means that probably involves a Honda Civic painting roads white or some other convoluted means that nobody's going to get these days, Jellico took note of some of my issues with Rival Turf in the previous video and went back in time to make the appropriate adjustments in their follow-up title because Brawl Brothers plays so much better than the previous title. Like, the differences are practically night and day. The gameplay is generally much quicker, the controls are much more responsive, the hit detection has been polished up a bit, though there are still rare misses here and there, and there are more interesting set pieces for you to tackle. The first stage has you being chased by a chopper gunning you down. You're fighting robots, which is nice. You're going up a rising platform, which is always a neat bit. And you're navigating a sewer maze, which is And there's also elevator mazes, which, Okay, so not everything is an improvement, but most of it is, and something that was missing from Rival Turf was added into Brawl Brothers that made it worth playing. That little something that makes putting up with the repetitive beating of the same looks over and over much less so. And it really is the little things sometimes. Like whenever you lose a life, you get to choose your respawn point before actually respawning on the field, which actually threw me off a couple times first time playing it, but it actually helps in giving yourself an edge over the opposition or just steering clear of unfair circumstances. Angry mode returns from the previous game as an option you could enable in the options, and it seems to activate more often than before, which can be helpful in a pinch. Sometimes enemies will drop items for you to pick up, whether it be food for health, pipes for the beatings, or, if you're lucky, even a shotgun. A non-lethal shotgun, of course. We can't have these things blowing mooks away in a single blow in a Nintendo game. What do you think this is, Doom? Get the fuck out of here. Like I said, Brawl Brothers only has 4 stages, but they're fairly lengthy affairs. Still, it's a game that isn't going to wear out its welcome. And there's also the versus mode where you can pit characters against each other and beat each other up, which is a nice little bonus of sorts. Could have done without the mazy elements of certain stages, but the Japanese version doesn't have those mazy elements, so you could go with that if you prefer. It's easy with a code if you know the code and stuff. Brawl Brothers sports some slick graphics. Okay, maybe not, but at the very least it's a better looking game compared to Rival Turf's blandness. You've got some fun and creative characters to both play with and beat up, even if they retain the same smallish size, but at the very least they're a little more creative this time around. Each hit is accompanied with some comic book onomatopoeia for added effect, the stages look more vibrant and colorful, definitely more varied set pieces for you to play in. Again, little things that makes the experience a little more personable. Sound also sees a step up from the previous rushing beat, definitely a far better selection of musical bits that I wouldn't call memorable, but at the very least are much more punchier and livelier than the dull, listless tunes of Rival Turf. The sound effects also possess a bit more crunch, more than satisfactory in the audio department. Overall, Brawl Brothers is a perfectly satisfactory and entertaining enough beat-em-up that did everything that Rival Turf did, but to much more favorable results because everything is just done better, which is key to this sort of thing. A wider cast of characters, more variety in combat situations, generally snappier gameplay and control, and the versus mode is a bit of a bonus, but point being, if you're going to play one of these Jellicle brawler things, Brawl Brothers is probably the best choice you could make because, minus the mazes, it is a genuinely fun time had by all. Though you probably want to play the Japanese rushing beat Ran, since it doesn't have the mazes and it's generally easier, but either way you look at it, it's a fun time. And then there was the Peacekeepers, which if nothing else had the nicer title screen of the 3 games. It's got that much going for it. But I guess we'll see if that's all it has going for it next time.